What if everything you think you know about yourself, your name, your memories, your personality, isn't what it seems? What if the story you've been telling yourself your whole life is just that, a story? What if everything you've been taught about who you are is based on a lie? Here's something that might sound completely crazy at first, that is, you were never born and you'll never die. Yeah, I know, it sounds impossible, right? But hear me out. This idea isn't just some random thought experiment or a fancy way of talking about philosophy. It's about seeing something so real, so obvious, that it's been right in front of you all along. You just didn't notice it. From the moment we're born, we're taught to think of ourselves as separate, like we're these little islands floating around in a huge ocean. But what if that's not true? What if you're not just you in the way you've been taught to think of yourself? In some ways, it's like we've been walking through life wearing foggy glasses, convinced the world is one way, without realizing how much we're missing. This fog, this illusion, is what people in Advaita Vedanta call Maya. Maya is what tricks us into believing we're just this person, in this body, with these thoughts and memories. It's what makes us feel like we're separate from everything else. But when you take off those foggy glasses and look at what's really going on, something amazing happens. You start to see that the boundaries you thought were real aren't really there at all. I get it, this might already feel like it's bending your brain a bit. But stick with me here. Let's question some of the things we've always just taken for granted. What if you're not actually the voice in your head, the emotions you feel, or even the body you're walking around in? What if the real you has been something much bigger and freer this whole time? If you're ready to look at things in a different way, maybe even see yourself and life in a way you never thought possible, then let's get into it. Trust me, this might just be the most important thing you ever hear. Let's first get started with the stories we tell ourselves. These stories form the foundation of how we see the world and our place within it. But what if this identity we cling to so tightly is just another layer of the illusion? To explore this further, we need to examine what we call the self. Where does it come from? And is it as real as it feels? From the moment we're born, we're taught to define ourselves. Our name, our family, our achievements. These become the building blocks of the story we call me. We label ourselves based on roles: a student, a friend, a leader, or an artist. Memories and experiences pile on, creating the narrative of who we are. But have you ever paused to question this? Are you truly the sum of these labels and memories? Think of a time when you felt different than you do now. Perhaps a moment when you surprised yourself, when you acted completely out of character. If your identity can shift like that, how solid is it really? Here's where modern science enters the conversation. Neuroscientists have identified something fascinating about how the brain constructs our sense of self. There's a network in the brain called the default mode network, or DMN. It's active when your mind is wandering, when you're reflecting on yourself, and when you're thinking about your place in the world. The DMN is like a background narrator, constantly feeding you thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," or "this is my goal," or "I need to fix this." These thoughts form the foundation of your identity, making the I feel real and solid. But here's the kicker. This network can be quieted. Practices like mindfulness, meditation, or even moments of deep focus have been shown to calm the DMN. When that happens, the sense of me loosens its grip, and you begin to experience life without the filter of the ego. It's as if the constant narration pauses, and for a moment, you see the world as it truly is, connected, fluid, and free from the boundaries of a separate self. Let's take this deeper with a simple metaphor. Imagine standing on the shore, watching waves crash against the sand. Each wave looks distinct. One rises, another falls, each appearing separate from the others. But when you step back, you realize every wave is just part of the ocean. There's no true separation between them. They're simply expressions of the same infinite body of water. The same is true of you. You're not a separate wave, isolated and alone. You are the ocean itself, vast and infinite, expressing itself momentarily as a wave. Your thoughts, emotions, and identity may feel distinct, but they're just temporary forms, rising and falling within the boundless awareness that you truly are. If the self is just a story, a fleeting wave within the vast ocean of awareness, then what does that mean for the ideas we hold about birth and death? These concepts seem so certain, so undeniable, yet they're deeply tied to the illusion of separateness. To truly understand your boundless nature, we need to challenge the very foundation of these beliefs. What if birth and death are not the bookends of your existence, but part of the same narrative illusion as the self? Let's start with a question. What does it mean to say you were born? On the surface, it feels obvious. You have a birth certificate, childhood memories, and stories that confirm your starting point. But when you look closer, isn't this just another layer of the story? The body you inhabit had a beginning and it will have an end. But the awareness that notices this body, it has no such boundaries. It was never born, and it cannot die. Birth and death are constructs of the mind, ways we make sense of the impermanence of form. But your true nature, what you are beneath the labels, memories, and stories, is formless, timeless, and untouched by the cycle of beginnings and endings. Buddhism offers a profound lens through which to view this idea. The concept of anatta, or non-self, challenges the belief in a permanent, unchanging I. According to this teaching, the self is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic process, a collection of thoughts, sensations, and perceptions constantly in flux. When you see through the illusion of self, you also see through the fear of its loss. After all, how can you fear the death of something that was never truly there to begin with? Liberation comes when you recognize this truth. What you are is not the story, the body, or the mind. You are the awareness in which all these things arise and dissolve. Here's something you can try right now. Close your eyes and ask yourself a simple question. Who am I? Notice what happens. Your mind might rush to answer, I'm a parent, or I'm someone who loves music, or I'm someone with big dreams. But pause and dig deeper. Who is it that's noticing these thoughts? Who is asking the question? Keep peeling back the layers. Beneath every label and answer, you'll find something extraordinary. An open, boundless awareness that isn't tied to a name, a role, or a story. That awareness is what you've always been, long before the idea of you ever took shape. If birth and death are constructs and the self is an illusion, why do these ideas hold such power over us? The answer lies in our deep attachment to the story of me. We cling to this identity not just as a convenience for navigating life, but as if it were our very essence. This attachment is the source of much of our fear, pain, and struggle. To understand this, we need to explore what happens when we hold on to the illusion of a separate self too tightly. Imagine holding a cup of water. It's easy to see the water as distinct, contained within the boundaries of the cup. But what happens when you pour it back into the ocean? Can you pinpoint the moment it stops being water in a cup and becomes part of the sea again? This is how the self operates. We live as though our identity is confined to the cup of our body and mind. We cling to this container, believing it defines who we are. But in truth, the self is like the water. Never truly separate from the infinite awareness it comes from. The illusion of separation is what keeps us tied to fear and suffering. There's another layer to this attachment, one that psychologist Carl Jung called the shadow self. The shadow is made up of the parts of ourselves we don't want to acknowledge, the fears, insecurities, and desires we push into the unconscious. But here's the paradox. The more we suppress these aspects, the more power they hold over us. The shadow becomes a driving force behind egocentric behavior, keeping us trapped in the illusion of separateness. To dissolve the ego and see through the illusion of self, we must first face and integrate the shadow. Integration doesn't mean erasing the shadow. It means acknowledging and accepting it as part of the whole. When we do this, the need to defend or protect the ego begins to fade. We become freer, lighter, and more connected to the truth of who we are. At the heart of this discussion lies a simple but profound truth. Clinging to the illusion of a separate self is the root of all suffering. When we believe we are separate, we fear losing what we have and not getting what we want. We become attached to outcomes, relationships, and identities, thinking they define our worth or existence. This attachment creates a constant cycle of fear and desire, pulling us away from the present moment and the boundless awareness that underlies it. But when we see through this illusion, when we recognize that the self we've been clinging to is just a story, suffering begins to dissolve. Freedom isn't found in holding on, but in letting go. By loosening our grip on the separate self, we open the door to a life that is lighter, more peaceful, and infinitely more expansive. If clinging to the self creates suffering, then what exactly is this self we're so attached to? The answer lies in understanding the ego, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a construct to be seen for what it truly is. By exploring the nature of the ego, we can begin to unravel the illusion that keeps us bound and take steps toward a deeper, freer way of being. The ego feels like the center of everything, like a solid I that thinks, acts, and experiences. But when you take a closer look, you'll find it's not as real as it seems. The ego is simply a bundle of thoughts, beliefs, and memories. It's the voice in your head that says, "This is my story. This is who I am." But this voice is constantly shifting. One moment it tells you you're successful, the next it whispers that you're not enough. It defines itself through fleeting experiences, yet clings to them as if they're permanent. Here's the key realization. If the ego is always changing, how can it be the unchanging essence of who you are? It's not. The ego is a construct, a narrative your mind creates to make sense of the world. But you are not the story. You are the awareness in which the story unfolds. Interestingly, some cutting-edge research has offered new ways to explore the nature of the ego. Substances like psilocybin and LSD, when used in controlled settings, have been shown to reduce activity in brain regions associated with the ego. This often leads to experiences of profound interconnectedness, where the boundaries between me and everything else dissolve. These experiences, often described as ego dissolution, provide a glimpse into a reality where the sense of self is no longer at the center. People report feeling a deep unity with the universe, a peace that transcends words. While these methods are not for everyone and must be approached with caution, they highlight an important truth. The ego is not as fixed or necessary as it seems. You don't need psychedelics or extraordinary experiences to begin seeing through the ego. Start by observing your thoughts and emotions. When a thought arises like "I'm not good enough" or "I need this to feel happy," pause and notice something important. You are not the thought. You are the awareness noticing the thought. Try this exercise. The next time you feel overwhelmed by emotions like anger, fear, or sadness, instead of identifying with the feeling, ask yourself, who is feeling this? You'll find that the emotion is real, but the I who claims it is just another thought, another part of the story. When you stop identifying with the ego, something remarkable happens. The chatter in your mind begins to quiet. You stop feeling like a small, separate being struggling against the world. Instead, you start to sense the boundless awareness that has always been there, the true essence of who you are. If the ego is just a construct, a collection of fleeting thoughts and beliefs, what happens when you stop identifying with it? Does life become chaotic, or does it flow even more naturally? This is where the journey takes a profound turn. Letting go of the illusion of a separate self doesn't mean losing control. It means discovering how life moves effortlessly without the need for constant interference from me. Imagine stepping back from the constant chatter of your mind, the endless commentary about who you are, what you need, and how you're doing. What's left when that voice quiets down? Surprisingly, not chaos, but clarity. Life doesn't stop when the ego takes a back seat. It flows more freely. Your heart keeps beating, your breath continues, decisions arise naturally, and emotions pass like waves on the ocean. The illusion that I am in control falls away, revealing that life has always unfolded effortlessly on its own. It's like driving a car. At first, you're hyper-aware of every movement, every turn, every adjustment. But over time, driving becomes second nature. The car moves without conscious effort, guided by an ease you didn't know was possible. Living without a separate self is like this. Life flows, not because of you, but through you. Here are some ways to begin noticing this flow. 1. Pause. When stressed. The next time you feel overwhelmed or criticized, instead of reacting, stop and ask yourself, Who is feeling this? Look closely. Can you find a distinct I that owns the emotion, or do you just see sensations, thoughts, and feelings arising on their own? 2. Observe decisions happening. Pay attention to how decisions arise. When faced with a choice, notice how it unfolds naturally. The mind may think it's controlling the process, but if you step back, you'll see that decisions emerge as part of the flow of life, without the need for a controlling self. 3. Relax into awareness. Take a few moments each day to simply rest in awareness. Close your eyes and feel the aliveness of the present moment. Notice how everything, sounds, thoughts, emotions, arises and fades within the space of awareness. You don't need to do anything. You're already here, fully present. Living without a separate self may sound liberating, but it also raises profound questions. If there's no me, then who is making decisions, feeling emotions, or living this life? These doubts are natural and deeply rooted in the conditioning of the ego. But rather than pushing them away, let's explore them together. They're the keys to seeing through the illusion and embracing a greater truth. One of the most common questions that arises is, if there's no self, who is living my life? On the surface, it feels like an unanswerable paradox. After all, you're here, thinking, feeling, and experiencing right now. But when you look deeper, you'll notice something extraordinary. Thoughts and emotions arise on their own, actions unfold naturally, and life flows effortlessly. The sense of I claiming ownership is simply an afterthought, a narrative added to make sense of what's happening. Another fear often surfaces. Will I lose my humanity if I let go of the ego? The ego makes us believe that it's essential to our individuality and emotions. But the truth is, letting go of the ego doesn't mean becoming detached or robotic. On the contrary, it allows for a fuller, richer experience of life. Without the constant need to defend or validate a separate self, you're free to connect with others and the world with greater openness and compassion. You don't lose your humanity, you rediscover its depth. Think of a whirlpool in a river. From the outside, it appears to have its own distinct shape and boundaries, separate from the water around it. But when you look closer, you realize that the whirlpool is not independent. It's simply the movement of the river itself. The boundaries are an illusion created by the flow of the water. The same is true of the self. It feels distinct like its own entity, but it's inseparable from the flow of life. The thoughts, emotions, and experiences that create the sense of me are just like the water swirling in the whirlpool, temporary, dynamic, and always part of a greater whole. When the whirlpool dissolves, nothing is lost. The water simply continues to flow. As we address doubts and misconceptions, the illusion of the self begins to unravel. Each fear, question, and analogy brings us closer to a deeper truth. If the self is not the center of your experience, then what is? Beneath the shifting thoughts, emotions, and sensations lies something steady, something timeless. This is the awareness that has always been present, silently witnessing it all. Now, let's turn our attention fully to this boundless awareness and the freedom it reveals. Imagine watching a movie. The characters, the story, and the drama unfold on the screen, and for a while you're completely absorbed. You laugh, you cry, you even forget it's a movie, but then at some point you step back and realize it's just a projection. The screen itself was never affected by the story. It was always there, unchanged. Your awareness is like that screen. Thoughts and emotions may rise and fall, but they are not you. They're simply experiences appearing within awareness. This awareness doesn't age, it doesn't suffer, and it doesn't cling to the narrative of me. It's timeless, boundless, and ever-present. The realization that you are this awareness, unmoving and untouched by the passing waves of life, is the ultimate truth. It's not something you need to attain, it's what you've always been. All that's needed is to see it clearly. Take a moment right now. Pause whatever you're doing and simply notice your experience. Don't try to analyze it, just be present. Notice the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, and even the thoughts in your mind. Now, shift your attention to the one who is aware of all this. This presence, the one who is noticing, is not a thought or an emotion. It's not bound by time or space. It doesn't come and go. It's simply here, witnessing everything effortlessly. Rest in this awareness. There's no need to search or strive. It's already complete, already whole. When you realize this, the endless chase for meaning, identity, or control begins to fade. You see that you've never been the wave, the story, or the illusion of me. You've always been the ocean, the infinite awareness in which everything arises and dissolves. As we come to an end, let's explore what we've learned today in this video. We began by questioning the very foundation of our identity, the idea of me that we've carried for so long. We uncovered how the self is an illusion, a construct of fleeting thoughts and memories, and how clinging to this illusion creates fear and suffering. We explored how ancient wisdom, like the concept of Maya in Advaita Vedanta and Anatta in Buddhism, reveals the truth of our boundless, timeless nature. Alongside this, modern science helped us see how the default mode network in our brains perpetuates the story of self, and how practices like mindfulness can quiet that story, offering glimpses of freedom. Finally, we came to the ultimate realization: you were never born, you'll never die. The separate self is just a story, but the awareness that you are is infinite, free, and ever-present. This awareness is not something you need to find. It's what you've been all along. By resting in this truth, the search for identity ends, and life becomes a seamless flow of peace, connection, and freedom. If this video helped you see yourself or the world differently, take a moment to let that realization settle. Share your thoughts in the comments. How has this perspective reshaped the way you see your life? For more journeys like this one, subscribe to the channel and join us for the next exploration. There's so much more to uncover together about the nature of reality, identity, and the freedom that lies beyond the self. Let's end with this beautiful insight from John Wheeler. You are not the wave, but the ocean. The wave rises and falls, but the ocean remains, vast and still, as the foundation of all that is. With that said, thank you for watching. Until next time, stay curious, stay present, and remember, the truth of who you are has always been right here.